Hi there guys, Mr. Martin here. Thanks again so much for joining me. Now in this video what we're going to be looking at are the explanations of conformity. So what we're interested in here is what makes some people conform when others don't. Or moreover, what makes some people conform on some occasions and not others. So in other words, what factors affect the levels of conformity that we see in experiments such as Ash's in 1951. Now, the explanations or the factors that affect conformity can be divided into two rough types. We've got situational factors, which we'll look at today, and we've got individual factors, which we'll look at in our next video. Now, a situational factor, you can understand, is something that varies from one situation to another. So we're not interested in the participant's mind here, we're interested simply in the environment that they're in. What is it about the situation that makes someone more or less likely to conform? Now there are four of these and we'll take them step by step, so let's dive straight in. Perhaps the most obvious one that we're going to look at here is group size. So it might be assumed that a larger majority has a much bigger influence than just one or two people. So Ash, in a little variation to his original study, does put this to the test, and he says, okay, if we have more people in the room with the participant, what effect is that going to have? Turns out here, with only one person deliberately given the wrong answer, there's almost zero conformity. It's just your word versus someone else's. Doesn't matter at all. With two confederates, we see a very small increase in conformity. It's roughly about 13% or so. And then 3 seems to be the magic number here. So once we have a majority of 3 in the room, all of them given the wrong answer, that's when you are most likely to also conform to the group and give the wrong answer. Interestingly here though, if we stack on more people into the experiment, nothing really much happens. Yeah, there's a small increase between 3 and 4 and very tiny increase between 4 and 5. But if we average out between 3 and 15, turns out there's not really much of a difference between the two of them. So 3 seems to be the magic number. Any less than that, conformity drops. Any more than that, nothing happens to conformity. Interesting. The second is social support. So what Ash is interested in here is, I wonder if it's the majority that are unanimous that has the effect on conformity. We have one person in the room who's being forced to go against everyone else. Must be very difficult for them. So if I gave that participant an ally, would that have an impact on conformity? Now Ash is very clever with this. What he does is he seats the ally forth and he tells this confederate, whatever you do, you give the right answer. Therefore, this guy is answering before the true participant. So when the participant's sitting right at the end, he's already got someone else in the room that's gone against the group. Does this have any impact on conformity? Of course it does. It has a huge impact on conformity. It decreases massively. It's almost something like 4% or so of people that actually conform after that point. So just having one other person that's willing to go against the group means that you yourself have the confidence to also not conform and go against the group. Now what's interesting about this is that the participants report on interview feelings of warmth and they liked the ally sitting in position number 4, but they didn't realize that they'd been influenced by him. So they weren't actually aware of the impact that this ally had on them. All they knew is that they liked him and they were more likely to go against the group as well. Quite interesting. Third in our situational factors is the secrecy of response. Now, what Ash is really studying here is public compliance. You're sitting in a room, you've got everybody else there reading out one answer. Are you going to read out the same answer so you don't look like a fool, like an idiot? Well, what Ash does in this little experiment here is he has the participant come in late. So all the other stooges are already sitting down around the table. And he says to the person, look, I'm sorry, you've come in a little bit late. You're not going to be able to read out your answer. Instead, what I'd like you to do is to write down your answer on this piece of paper here. Now, this is quite interesting here because now the participant has Secrecy. He's got another sort of basically tool on his belt here. He can answer in secret. So if he doesn't have to publicly comply, will that influence conformity? And the answer again is of course it does. A huge decrease in conformity if you're allowed to secretly write down your answer. Now, this would suggest that in real life situations where we can hide our response or avoid responding in front of other people, compliance is much less likely to occur. Lastly, we're going to look at the similarity of the group. Now, experiments on conformity, Ashes included, tend to use strangers. And that's all well and good for lab psychology, but away from the lab, we are most likely to come into contact with, and in that case be influenced by, conform with, people we have something in common with. So your friends, your colleagues, your family perhaps. So if we have a group which is similar to you, so you've got something in common with them, does that impact on conformity? And what we find is that yes, it does. The more similar you are to the group, the more you have in common with them, the more likely you are to conform. So if your friends are doing something, you are much more likely to conform to them than if it was a group of strangers. If your family is doing something, you are much more likely to conform than if it was just strangers. Even being in the same situation as someone means you're more likely to conform. So we have people sitting in buses or people on planes. If you've even got something slightly in common with them, you might assume that they're similar to yourselves in some way, and that's why you conform a little bit more. Quite interesting. Okay guys, that's all we'll look at in this little video here, quite a short one today. Key concepts, these are the situational factors that we've looked at here. So group size, social support, secrecy of your response, and the similarity of yourself to the group as well. I like to remember these by using the S initials. So these are the 5 S's: situational, size, support, secrecy, similarity. And this will probably help you if you've got an essay about these in the near future. Thanks a lot then guys, that's everything for this video. In our next one, we're going to be looking at individual factors and how they affect conformity. Until then guys, thanks so much for joining me, and we'll see you again. Cheers!